Number 5. Annabelle. Well, it wouldn't quite be a video about the Warrens without Annabelle. Do you ever wonder, did they ever thank her for all the good publicity she gave them over the years? Now, by now, I'm sure all of you are very familiar with the tale of Annabelle, the haunted doll that Ed and Lorraine kept captive, and probably the most famous case the two of them were involved in. They say that the Amityville Horror was their most famous case, but they made 3 spin-off movies just about Annabelle, so she's pretty big shakes. It was given to a nursing student as a gift from her mother, and within days it turned bad. Notes would appear around the house, scrawled in blood, that read out terrifying messages like, "Help me." It allegedly lunged at the girl's boyfriend one night, grabbing him by the neck. And after that, Ed and Lorraine were called in. I mean, as soon as a toy in your apartment starts trying to choke you out, yeah, definitely get some outside help. They called in to help exorcise the demon inside Annabelle. Now, in the end, they kept her locked up tight, surrounded by rosaries and holy water to ensure the demon inside can't harm anyone anymore. Now, while the stories inspired by Annabelle have gone on to big, great things, and the fictional Annabelle has enjoyed quite the career as a movie star, the real Annabelle is still locked away to keep that evil dormant. In this recently released footage, we're treated to some up-close and personal glamour shots of Annabelle in the flesh, or stuffing, maybe? Locked tight behind her cage. And this footage comes to us from Tony Spera, the son-in-law of Ed and Lorraine, who's taken it upon himself to maintain their legacy on his YouTube channel. If you're a big Ed and Lorraine fan, go check it out, because there's hours and hours of stuff to work through. He takes us on a brief tour of the museum, but gets up close and personal with Annabelle herself. Even through a YouTube screen, you can almost feel some evil energy radiating off this doll. Now, sadly, the Warrens Museum of the Occult is currently closed, so you can't visit Annabelle right now, but they're hoping to reopen it one day soon, so Annabelle can get back to scaring her fans in person like she always has. She makes convention appearances, did you know that? She just recently was at the Warrens Paracon, the convention dedicated to supernatural hunters of the unknown. I'm not sure if I personally would take a selfie with Annabelle. I wouldn't want to ruin her photo like that, unless I could guarantee she'd look really good. I don't want to offend her in any way. I try not to upset any cursed dolls. And if you're looking for way more stories about Ed and Lorraine Warren, true tales of terror, fake fibs of fright, ghouls, goblins, cryptids, aliens, true crime, basically everything scary under the sun and above it, Top 5 Scary is the only place to be. Stay subscribed, stay scared, and don't miss a thing. But let's keep going, because we got a whole lot more video to go through. Number 4. Under Scotland. Now, the Warrens' investigations did not just take them on road trips all over the United States. Now, the Warrens might have visited a case in almost every state and then some. The Warrens' journeys saw them traveling all over the globe in an effort to uncover truths and combat evil wherever it was found. In this recently posted footage, we get to see a unique perspective from the Warrens, focusing on Lorraine Warren digging around underground in the secret vaults beneath Edinburgh. Under the ground is a series of large, cavernous vaults that were once used as a storage space for merchants, but when abandoned, became home to Edinburgh's lowest and poorest, who began to make it their dwellings. Probably really nice, what with no daylight, musty air, a thriving rodent population, and hey, for the right price, that honestly sounds better than most apartments in Toronto. Because of this, the vaults were the perfect place to conduct a little nefarious business, if you know what I mean. You know, all sorts of nasty crimes that aren't fit to discuss on YouTube. It's believed that 2 of Edinburgh's most prolific criminals hid bodies here before taking them to medical schools to sell off. So, because of its grim history, it's no surprise that people believe the vaults to be haunted, claiming they feel watched or touched when walking through them. So when supernatural weirdness happens, the Warrens are soon to follow. This one's actually pretty cool. It's kind of like going on a ghost tour from your own home. First person, making you feel like you're exploring those subterranean depths with her. The real highlight though is the guide, who's this very geriatric Scottish man who seems to know the tunnels very well. If I ever take this tour, I need to insist on my guide being an old Scottish man who I almost can't understand. That seems like the most appropriate and trustworthy way to go ghost hunt. Now, they didn't find anything too much on this investigation, but while in there, Lorraine claims that she can feel something communicating with her long ago. Could it just be the spirits from long ago, or radio feedback? Let me know in the comments.
In 3rd place, we have the elusive White Lady of Union Graveyard. Some believe she is Harriet Seeley, whose young son passed shortly after being born, and Harriet herself passing soon afterwards. Legend believes she may have died in hopes of finding her son, and still wanders their final resting place searching him out. While others believe she is the ghost of a woman from the 1940s who killed her husband and later herself and is doomed to wander the graveyard. You tell me which one you believe. Her physical description is the one thing that remains consistent. She is a young woman wearing a white dress with dark hair. Thank goodness I'm not wearing white today. It seems as if she enjoys scaring the daylights out of the living, which hey, my kind of gal. Many who have witnessed her believe they have almost hit her with their vehicle, only to find no trace of her once they pull over, while others claim they have often seen her hovering slightly above the ground around the cemetery, going back and forth amongst different gravestones. In 1993, local firefighter Glenn Powell received a call about a transformer explosion and drove to the scene of the incident with a police officer and observed a female driver following closely behind him on the road. He remembers the night sky had turned pink, my favorite color, and the explosion emitted large amounts of electricity that had made the hair on his arm stand up at a close distance. Glenn was driving along the road beside the cemetery when the officer seated next to him yelled, "Watch out!" In the middle of the road was a woman with, you guessed it, long brown flowing hair and wearing a white Victorian nightgown. Glenn described seeing a surprised look on her face before slamming on the brakes, but was unable to avoid hitting her, describing it like hitting a brick wall, with the back of his truck flying into the air and the policeman next to him being launched into the dashboard. The driver behind him jumped out of the car and helped the two men search the area of the crash. To check on the woman, Glenn is quoted as saying, "There was no red bodily fluids, there was no clothing, there was nobody, there was nothing." Located in Connecticut, Lorraine used to often take walks through the cemetery, saying that it was one of the most haunted places around. Ed caught the White Lady on camera on September 1st, 1990 at 2:40 a.m., his 7th night in a row of filming at the cemetery, determined to have footage as proof, and we can show some of that footage to you now. He described dark figures surrounding her, shapes that he said were wood ghosts that seemed to jump on her while they all argued. In second place, we have the Amityville Horror. On November 13th of 1974, Ronald DeFeo Sr., his wife, and 4 of their offspring, Dawn, Allison, Mark, and John, had their lives ended by a firearm inside their home in suburban Amityville, New York. And at the time, homicide detectives claimed it was the largest number of victims in a single slang on Long Island. The deceased were found in their nightclothes and were shot in the back, apparently while they were asleep. There were no signs of a struggle inside the home, where a sign hanging outside the main entrance read, "High hopes." Sure. The killings were reported by the only surviving member of the family, the oldest son, Ronald. He told the police that he arrived at the home shortly after 6 p.m. but found the front door locked, so he crawled into the house through a window and stumbled across the icky scene. He later confessed that he had ended the lives of his family around 3:30 a.m., acting out the scenes for detectives as he described how he took out his family one by one, with the weapon eventually being found in Amityville Creek. Ronald's trial began in October of 1975. His defense attorney, William Weber, tried to make a case that the defendant, who allegedly heard voices, was innocent by reason of insanity, but the court eventually sentenced him to 6 concurrent 25-year to life sentences. Try saying that 5 times fast. Eesh. A year later, the Lutz family moved into the now abandoned home, and that's where this goes from simply tragic to much, much more. Most of the DeFeo family's furniture was still in the house, because it was included for $400 as part of the deal. You know what, I'd take that deal too. A friend of George Lutz, the father of the family, had learned about the history of the house and insisted on having it blessed, and at the time, George was a non-practicing Methodist and had no experience of what this would entail. Kathy, the mom, was a non-practicing Catholic and explained the process to him. George knew a Catholic priest named Father Mancuso who agreed to carry out the house blessing. He arrived to perform the blessing while George and Kathy were unpacking their belongings on the afternoon of December 18th, 1975, and went into the home to carry out the rites. When he flicked the first amount of holy water and began to pray, he heard a masculine voice demand that he get out. When leaving the house, the priest did not mention this incident to either George or Kathy until December 24th, when he called George and advised him to stay out of the second-floor room where he had heard the mysterious voice, which happened to be the former bedroom of Mark and John DeFeo that Kathy had planned to use as a sewing room, but the call was cut short by static. Following his visit to the house, the father allegedly developed a high fever and blisters on his hands, similar to stigmata. At first, George and Kathy experienced nothing unusual in the house, but the horrors that happened over the next 28 days were awful for the Lutz family, bearing witness to slime pouring out of their walls, strange odors throughout the home, and George would wake up at 3:15 every morning, which is right around the time Ron DeFeo carried out his original crimes. A garage door would open and close on its own, an invisible spirit knocked a knife down in the kitchen, a pig-like creature with red eyes was reported staring at George and his son Daniel through a window. Also, Kathy and 2 of her children experienced bouts of levitation while trying to sleep. The footage we have from this heinous month is of a boy with glowing eyes, believed to be the spirit of the late John DeFeo. By mid-January of 1976, after another attempt at a house blessing by George and Kathy, they experienced what would be their final night in the house. Now, the Lutzes were never able to give a full account of the events that took place on this occasion, describing them as too frightening. After getting in touch with Father Mancuso, the Lutzes decided to take some belongings and stay at Kathy's mother's house in nearby Deer Park, New York, until they had sorted out the problems with the house. They claimed the phenomena followed them there, describing greenish-black slime coming up the staircase towards them. Yeah, no thanks. And finally, in first place, we have footage of an American exorcism. While the video is blurred out on YouTube to protect the identity of the poor girl, I personally think it's up there as one of the most frightening things I've ever seen. At an hour and 20 minutes long, it depicts a Catholic bishop in Connecticut attempting to converse with a demonic entity that has possessed the body of an innocent young woman, while her family restrains her. Ed and Lorraine were the ones to alert the church to the possession after meeting her during an audience chat session that was held at the conclusion of one of their public presentations. During portions of the exorcism when prayer is done, you can hear the demon acting wildly, and it originally refuses to give its name, both of which are quite common in cases of demonic possession. Eventually we learn that there are 4 demons possessing our victim, with one of them identifying themselves as Robert, which happens to be a name associated with the son of Satan.
Number 5. Annabelle. Well, it just would not be the Warrens without Annabelle. She's easily the most famous thing in their collection, and let's be real, probably one of the most famous dolls on the planet. You know, Barbie, Annabelle. Do you ever wonder if they ever thank her for all the good publicity she's given them? By now, I'm sure if you're watching this video, you know the story of Annabelle, the haunted doll that they kept captive, but I'll run it by you again in case you don't. It was given to a nursing student as a gift from her mother, and within days, things started getting scary. Notes would appear around the house scrawled in red liquid that read out terrifying messages like, "Help me." Allegedly lunged at the girl's boyfriend one night, and well, after a doll comes alive and lunges at you, you call some help, and then Ed and Lorraine were called in to exorcise the demon inside Annabelle. In the end, they keep her locked up very tight, surrounded by rosaries and holy water to ensure the demon inside can't harm anyone anymore, and they keep her locked up except when they wheel her out for publicity events and take her to conventions. While Annabelle has enjoyed quite the career as a movie star, the real Annabelle is locked away to keep the evil dormant. In this footage, we're treated to some up close and personal glamour shots of Annabelle in the flesh, or stuffing, I guess, locked tight in her cage. The footage comes from Tony Spera, the son-in-law of Ed and Lorraine Warren, who's gonna get mentioned a whole heck of a lot in this video. He takes us on a brief tour of the museum, getting a real up close to it. Even through a YouTube screen, you can feel some evil radiating off this doll. Now sadly, if you're a big Warren superfan and you want to go check out the museum, unfortunately it's closed right now, but they are hoping to reopen it. So one day Annabelle can get back to scaring her fans in person like she always has. When I said before that they take her out to conventions, that wasn't just me being snarky, it's real. She just recently was at the Warrens Paracon, the convention dedicated to supernatural hunters of the paranormal. You can line up, take a photo with Annabelle. I'm not sure if I'd take a selfie with her though. I don't know. It might look good on a Tinder profile, maybe? I'm not sure. And if you're looking for way more Ed and Lorraine content, true tales of terror, fake fibs of frauds, cryptids, ghosts, ghouls, goblins, aliens, pretty much anything scary under the sun and above it, well, you already know Top 5 Scary is the place for that. Make sure you stay subscribed. Please ring that little bell to the side so you get all of our videos when they upload. But do that at the end of this video, okay? Because I got 4 more pieces of Ed and Lorraine footage coming up for you right now, baby. Number 4, the museum tour. Now, if you wanted to go to the world's foremost collection of haunted relics and cursed objects, there's probably no storeroom full of curses more than the legendary collection of the Warrens' Haunted Museum of Souvenirs. Now, like I said just a second ago, the museum is currently closed as of the writing of this video, but they are trying to reopen soon. You know, cross your fingers. But in the meantime, you can take a digital tour, as this footage posted by the Warrens' son-in-law, Tony Spera, shows Mr. Warren giving a guided tour of some of the more unique haunted artifacts resting in the Connecticut garage. Now the full video, definitely worth a watch if you're a big fan of the Warrens, since it's as close as you'll be able to get to walking around the museum these days. It's a full half-hour long of old Ed going into grand detail and recounting some stories about some of their more notable and famous cases. Shoutouts include the witch Hannah Cranna, an old Connecticut legend, or the conjuring mirror, which might sound like it has something to do with the movie, but very confusingly refers to a case where someone used this mirror in a ritual to try and summon a demon, a different demon. Ed talks briefly on some of their many cursed dolls and toys, such as a dinosaur from the Devil Made Me Do It case and film, and of course, no visit to the Warrens Museum would exclude Annabelle. She's the star attraction of the place, probably what keeps the lights on for so long. She's shown under a tight lock and key, and Ed goes over the history of how they brought her in, and he touches briefly on the containment protocol for her, how she has to always be locked up in a storage box behind glass, surrounded by rosary beads and doused in holy water, in an effort to keep the vile spirits tucked away. A small question: if a spirit is so powerful and malevolent that it's got this unspeakable ancient evil that attacks humans, wouldn't it be stronger than a pane of glass? Wouldn't it be stronger than a thin little thing of glass? I guess it's a doll, but I didn't think the solution to ultimate evil was to just put like a fence around it. That's what you do when like a dog is getting into stuff that you don't want them to get into. You just fence them out a bit in the backyard. Dogs, haunted dolls. Okay.
Number 3, the black lace veil. Right in the middle, we're going to talk about an event that had many eyewitnesses and was likely captured in some degree by recording equipment. Following one of their public lectures, Ed and Lorraine Warren were approached by a young couple, Alan and Lonnie. Alan had brought Lonnie to the lecture because he suspected that she was under the influence of the occult. He described a disturbance. When Lonnie became angry, her features would morph and transform into a creature resembling a wolf, and an entirely different voice would emerge from her. Just as Lorraine joined the conversation, a shocking incident unfolded. Lonnie experienced an instantaneous possession and lunged aggressively at Lorraine, utterly terrifying everyone present in the room. Ed swiftly escorted the couple to a backstage room where Lonnie was fully under possession, her face distorted into the aforementioned wolf-like appearance. After about 10 minutes, the possession subsided and Lonnie revealed her disturbing experiences of memory loss and losing time over the past few months, which, as you know, are all very common symptoms of possession. Lonnie confessed that she had resorted to witchcraft after failing to win Alan's affections. She performed a ritual that involved a black lace veil and a crown of goat horns, renouncing her faith and swearing allegiance to Satan. In a month, Alan began showing interest, but the demonic entity had gained entrance into her life. Ed knew that Lonnie needed an exorcism and contacted a priest who arrived the same day. During the exorcism, the entity within Lonnie screamed in protest, but was eventually separated from her, vowing to return to another. The Warrens took the black lace veil, goat horns, cup, and conjuring book for safekeeping to prevent repossession. However, the story of the veil didn't end there. Months later, during a meeting with another woman who manifested multiple personalities and inhuman entities, her gaze landed on the black veil. She clutched it, her features transformed, and she became an inhuman spirit. Ed, armed with blessed water, banished the demon a second and final time. Both of these events are said to have been captured on a tape recorder, as the Warrens frequently recorded their lectures. Number 2, the haunted pearl necklace. The haunted pearl necklace is also referred to as the pearls of death. This jewelry's effects are pretty obvious. The necklace is known as one of the most dangerous items within the Warrens Occult Museum, so yeah, it's living up to its name already. The Pearls of Death is a cursed necklace that has a curse or entity residing in it, causing anyone who wears it to be strangled, and in some cases even strangled so brutally that their lives are ended. Yeah. Death by a necklace. I'm starting to rethink my stance on that gorgeous blue diamond necklace. If you know, you know. It's an inside joke. Only my faves know what I'm talking about. One of their former owners commonly reported being choked while wearing them, even waking up with red marks on her neck after sleeping in them. The pearls are also extremely difficult to remove. Well, they're difficult to remove from the living. Ed and Lorraine Warren kept these pearls heavily guarded and surveyed, and if you're like me, the word surveyed raises excited alarm bells. That's right. Within the museum, several security cameras are placed, which not only protect the artifacts, but also monitor any strange activity. In one surveillance clip, which was privately distributed by an anonymous source who had regular access to the museum, revealed a myriad of strange activities surrounding the pearls. The video captures the pearls vibrating ever so slightly before a small light emanates from them, and a dark shadow quickly shifts towards the ground, as though it was water flowing out of the pearls. These events repeated night after night, typically around 4:24 a.m., with the effects being weaker the further away they get from the stated time. Whether Ed and Lorraine were aware of the footage being leaked to a select group of people, they never addressed it. They didn't even deny it. I suppose they figured ignoring the footage completely would decrease the interest in it, and hey, they were right. I'd never heard of it until now. Number 1, White Lady of Union Cemetery. You guys know how I feel about the naming. Come on, be more creative. The White Lady? Guys, just please try a little bit harder. Anyway, the White Lady is the name of the ghost that haunts the Union Cemetery in Connecticut. The legend surrounding her origin varies, but there are several points that consistently align to create an accurate backstory. She's thought to be the ghost of Harriet Seeley, who searches for her deceased son throughout the graveyard. It is also widely agreed that she wears a bright orange dress. Now, I'm kidding. Obviously. She wears a white dress, and you bet your bottom dollar it's a flowy one. The ghost was often seen by locals. She frequently spooked the citizens of the surrounding area, jumping in front of cars, appearing in their periphery, and then disappearing. Ed Warren was heavily interested in this apparition, so he set out on a quest to record this ghost for himself. Yes, for himself. As I said, they don't enjoy sharing their findings. Maybe the ghosts value privacy and Ed signed an NDA or something, I don't know. But the NDA didn't apply to the pair's son-in-law, Tony Spera, because shortly after their passing, he released the full footage. The footage begins by panning over a darkened cemetery, and there's definitely a heavy air surrounding the entirety of the footage. While panning over the rows of graves, a glowing human figure wearing a long white dress was spotted moving behind a tombstone, like it was playing hide and go seek. No close-up shots of the spirit were caught, and the camera wasn't very good, so any distinct details that the ghost may have remain a mystery. The video was reviewed by skeptics, and it was actually widely agreed that the footage was not doctored in any way. But not only that, the figure seen was not just an illusion or a filming trick. The being is in fact there. Ed Warren did manage to capture evidence of a ghost on camera, which is pretty amazing. Even though I'm not obsessed with him as a person, his career and accomplishments are right up my alley.
Starting us off in at number 5, psychic photos. If you're a fan of our channel, you may remember a video that we did on the eerie objects and artifacts that you can observe at Ed and Lorraine's Occult Museum in Connecticut. Well, here they go into detail about one particular type of creepy object that they have a handful of at their museum: psychic photographs. So what are psychic photographs? According to Ed Warren, a psychic photo is a phenomenon in which a camera, being an impartial witness, captures a ghost on film. But the crazy thing is that the image that you see of the ghost is one that it projects itself, an image of what it believes it looks like. This clip explores how exactly that happens, and the Warrens describe instances in which they've witnessed spirit forms appearing beyond the physical eye. Ed also tells of how he captured the White Lady of Union Graveyard with his camera, one of their most famous images.
We could put the first slide up and look at it. Wow.
Well, there you're seeing your stereotype ghost. Look at the appendage-like arms and legs. You know, when you see these little cute ghosts that are painted and drawn on Halloween, this is your stereotype ghost right here.
And at number 4, the Amityville House. This piece of footage, published by Mysterious World, features Lorraine Warren retelling her experience at the Amityville House. The Warrens in the past had gone to the famous Amityville House. It's one of their most famous cases. It's the place in which a man named Ronald DeFeo Jr. shot and killed 6 family members of his in 1974. And a year later, a new family, the Lutz family, had moved into the residence, only to be terrorized by a violent demonic presence. The Warrens had visited the house in an attempt to help the Lutz family, part of which was adapted into the 2016 movie The Conjuring 2. In this video clip, we get more insight on what the real-life events that occurred there were like. Lorraine tells her interview that, I quote, "Places like Amity, if you gave me $1 billion, I wouldn't go in that house again, because it messed up my life and my husband's life." She also tells the interviewer that the Amityville house was where she levitated, which is pretty creepy.
Number 3, the Donovan Poltergeist. Now our next entry is going to cover the Donovan Poltergeist, an often forgotten case in the Ed and Lorraine Warren oeuvre. In this clip, moderator Tony Spera, he's coming up a lot in this video, mentions that Ed has told him that on a scale of 1 to 10 for demonic intensity, I love that you can rank demonic intensity like that, the Warrens found this case to be a 10. Now I gotta ask, if it's so intense, I wonder why it's not more well known, but maybe they're keeping it hush hush because this is going to be the plot of Conjuring 4, so I'm giving you the spoilers right now. The Donovan Poltergeist case was in West Hartford, Connecticut, when a young girl had come into possession of a Ouija board, one of the most haunted Hasbro products ever released, alongside the game Sorry. Ed briefly talks about how people can be so dismissive of Ouija boards. I mean, imagine who would be so dismissive of Ouija boards. Don't know anybody like that. And Ed mentions that although they may seem innocent and unbecoming like a children's toy, a Ouija board is an invitation for spirits to come and disrupt. The girl in question in the Donovan case asked the Ouija board all sorts of questions and started to get answers that only a spirit could give. Ed says that the spirit needed something in return, and afterwards her house started to become rabid. Objects thrashed around, levitating, so on. Ed describes a violent interaction with a poltergeist, claiming that at one point during their investigation, he found himself literally pinned to the wall by a malevolent spirit. He describes as well the house being pelted with rocks from the sky and objects vanishing, a imagine the size of the umbrella you would need if it's raining rocks. This definitely sounds pretty extreme, all things considered. They claim that they would watch things dematerialize in front of their very own eyes, as if Mr. Scott was teleporting them away on the Star Trek transporter. Now, eventually, Ed describes getting in contact with a priest to perform an exorcism on the cursed house, freeing the family from spectral torment. And stay tuned to see if that's going to be the plot for Conjuring 4. I'm almost pretty sure. Number 2, the Japanese tunnels. Among the many accolades and achievement in his career before he was a ghost hunter, Ed Warren was a veteran of the US Navy and served in the Second World War and spent a good amount of time stationed around Japan. As such, from a young age, he developed an interest in Japanese folklore and the yokai and spirits that go with it. So naturally, they had to take a trip out east to go investigate some spirits there. They took a trip to Nagoya to investigate an apartment building that allegedly was being haunted by the floating head of an ancient samurai warrior. That's unnerving. I've heard of headless ghosts. I've even heard of nearly headless ghosts. But I think this is the first time I've heard of a ghost that was just a head. I think that honestly might be way scarier, just seeing a head like floating around down a hallway, but that's just me. Now, this wasn't the sole focus of their journeys though, they had more going on. The two of them also sought out an exploration of Japan's haunted tunnels, a tunnel where 200 people were allegedly buried alive after an avalanche during a typhoon trapped some 200 souls inside and made the tunnel their grave. Local reports would claim that the people would hear the screams of the damned late at night. So Ed and Lorraine visited it, and they both said it was terrifying and claimed that walking through it was freezing, the coldest thing either of them had ever experienced. Ed said a bitter cold came over him as he reached the end. He relays as well a story of a young man who tried to challenge his fear of the supernatural and ride a motorcycle right through this tunnel, paid for it with his life, and crashed. Now, for what it's worth, you know I love playing skeptic around here. You know I love getting my Scully on. I'm more of a Scully than I am a Mulder. I think this might be more of an urban legend because I did do a lot of digging for this video and I could not find any confirmed stories of a mass death inside a tunnel in Japan from an avalanche, but it's possible that it could be lost to time, very ancient, maybe records get lost, but nonetheless, interesting to listen to. And number 1, the Amityville interview. Now, the Warrens argued that the most famous case they ever worked on was the Amityville horror, and there's no denying that when this case happened, it gripped the American public. In 1973, Ronald DeFeo took a hunting rifle and went one by one, ending the lives of each one of his family members remorselessly while they slept. He would later go on to claim that he was being commanded to do it. He was compelled by spirits to act this way. A little bit later, a new family, the Lutzes, moved into the Amityville house, aware of what had transpired, but moving forward with it anyway. It's just such a good deal on rent. You gotta take it where you can get it. In this recently released footage, we hear from Ed and Lorraine speaking in great detail about their experiences working on the infamous legendary case on their TV program Seekers of the Supernatural with the Warrens. Lorraine outlines how immediately upon walking in she felt stepping into the house, she felt immediately wrong. She reiterates that upon entering, she felt a great unnerving presence. She says pretty much as soon as she entered the sewing room, she turned to the homeowner and said, "I hope this is as close to hell as I get." That's raw. The sewing room allegedly is where a focus of the haunting was, where the hundreds of flies apparated, where the spectral voices were heard telling people to get out. They speak as well of how they brought a reverend with them in the investigation who felt a physical slap in his face walking in. And if you're looking for more details about the Amityville case, the movie from the 70s and the movie with Ryan Reynolds, both pretty good retellings of the story. Ed goes on to address allegations that the Amityville case was a hoax, saying he offered a $3,000 reward for anyone who could prove to him that it was faked. Later in life, the lawyer representing Ronald DeFeo claims that the entire haunting story was a concoction he made up with the Lutzes over a bottle of wine in an effort to get a retrial for his client and drum up a bit of book business for the Lutzes. No word if he ever ended up getting $3,000 out of Ed. So whether or not the story really happened is one thing, but I think we can all agree the folklore that has come out of it is interesting enough and is a definitive part of the greater American mythos, this classic haunted house story. And it's entertaining nonetheless.
Starting off this countdown, we have the haunted house. In this clip, the Warrens talk about a haunted house that they visited and the creepy things they encountered while there. According to them, someone in the house was using an Ouija board and it opened up a bunch of doors to the spirit world, and that's how it got haunted. Plus, the house was 50 to 60 years old, and for some reason ghosts like to haunt old houses.
Communication, Tony. There had been doors open through Ouija boards.
That's what I was wondering.
But unlike most times, we do not condone the use of Ouija boards.
Well, guess who was using the Ouija board?
This girl go down into that hatchway. It was horrible. Both Jennifer and I, at that point together, said, we cannot go. Then there was a boy, and the boy was 8 years old. Now that girl was coming over to care for that boy.
So the young boy and his babysitter were using the Ouija board in the cold cellar and let the spirits into the house. So apparently back in the day, 3 women used to live in the house along with their mother. While they were living there, they were haunted by a ghost that was killed back in the day. They would see apparitions of this young girl smiling. At first, it was just the mom that would see the ghost, but then one of the other women started seeing the ghostly girl as well. In one case, she actually spoke to her.
Then she actually walked over and sat on the bed. I believe there was a conversation between them.
There was a conversation between the two of them, and then this dark form, who we believe to be the person who had perpetrated it, of this man.
That's when they learned that the house was haunted by the girl that was killed and her murderer. The Ouija board had opened the door and those spirits came back to the house. Now here's an image that the Warrens took while on the property. The ghost also manifested itself into orbs as well. So both the photos you just saw are of real ghosts. In our 4th spot today, we have the Amityville haunting. And if you guys are liking this video so far, then smash that like button because it really helps us out. This is probably one of the most controversial paranormal cases of all time. On November 13th of 1974, Robert Butch Defoe took the lives of his parents and his 2 brothers and 2 sisters. The house was then put up for sale and the Lutz family moved in. And apparently the demon that got Butch to do that horrific deed started to attack this new family. Their doors and cupboards would swing open and close by itself, green slime would ooze from their ceiling, and one time a demonic face with red glowing eyes was seen looking into the house. So on and so on. The Warrens went to investigate and confirmed that the house was haunted. Now I'm sure you've seen the photo of the young boy peering around the corner with scary glowing eyes. Well, let's see what the Warrens have to say about it.
Yes, with infrared film.
Oh, yes.
And it's in the upstairs bedrooms. Just to the left there, you see what looks like a small boy's face looking out with bioluminescent eyes, but it is a diabolical spirit with luminescent eyes that appears in that home to confuse the investigators.
The photo has always given me the creeps. What I didn't know is that that was of an evil spirit.
You think that is an evil spirit, Ed?
Positively. Everything about this house was evil.
Again, this is a controversial case because some people believe that the whole story was fake. In fact, Butch's lawyer, William Weber, admitted that he just made up this whole story along with George Lutz. They created the story over many bottles of wine, they said, so they admitted the house was never really haunted. But then how come the Warrens insisted it was? I don't know, just some food for thought. Also, that photo of the ghost boy, terrifying either way.
Number 3, an exorcism. To some, the ultimate paranormal dream would be getting to ride shotgun with the Warrens on one of their cases, getting to experience the paranormal firsthand under the tutelage of those who have battled it their whole lives. It would be like if Obi-Wan Kenobi picked you up on some backwater desert planet and asked if you wanted to go on a great adventure with him. It would be awesome. Well, some people get to live their dreams every day. Like me, you know, my dream was to stand in front of a camera and talk about ghosts all day long. A YouTuber by the name of Haley Reese got the rare opportunity to meet Tony Spera, the husband of Judy Warren, daughter of the family, and Lorraine Warren a bit before she passed away, and she got a blessed look into some never before seen footage of the pair of demonologists conducting some field work, namely an exorcism. Now the person being exorcised, their name is Roberto, but they've been blurred out to protect their safety. Demon possession is one thing, but doxing is a whole other. We see Lorraine and Tony both fiercely conducting an exorcism, locked in a spiritual battle against the forces inside. We hear Tony asking for the demon's name repeatedly, not just because he's a friendly guy, he seems like he's pretty friendly, but because to properly drive a demon out of a host, you need to know its name. Well, just listen to what he answers with, it's gonna shock you. Beelzebub. Now there's a bit of discrepancy whether or not Beelzebub and the devil are considered different entities. Depending on the text you're reading or the mythology, sometimes Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. Either way, it's bad news. It's not something you would like to invite inside you. The worst part is if you're listening, apparently that's not even the only demon inside. It was like a clown car of demonic energy inside one guy. Now, thankfully, after a tough battle, they were able to get all the demons outside of him and hopefully banish them all away. Do you think it leaves like a weird taste in your mouth after you've had demonic possession? Like, you know, when you wake up, like after having a nap and your mouth just feels weird? I feel like I need to brush my teeth a few times at least afterwards. Number 2, Annabelle on tour. Annabelle is the #1 name in cursed dolls. Sorry Megan, we love you, but Annabelle's got staying power and she's just been here longer. More movies too, although on a side note, I'm hoping they make more Megan movies. As such, Annabelle has become quite popular, with a lot of demand for the cursed toy, despite the fact that, you know, she's got a demon inside of her and is apparently very evil, and she should be kept under proper lock and key. Did you know that there was a significant enough demand for Annabelle that she tours? Yeah, you heard me right. Annabelle tours. And you know what? I think that's great. Girl, get it. You gotta get that bag, you know? The movies made you a star, really propelled you to the world stage. It would be a shame to keep you locked up in Connecticut when your fans are waiting. A recent clip made the rounds on TikTok of a paranormal investigator, Eric Vital, transporting the allegedly haunted doll to take her to Paracon, a convention for ghost hunters and paranormal enthusiasts to break bread, swap stories, and pick up cursed goods. Founded in the Warrens' memory to carry on their legacy and establish a community of ghost hunters. Eric is part of the New England Society for Paranormal Research, the foundation created by Ed and Lorraine to further the development and research of the paranormal. Now, this short video of him unpacking Annabelle got all kinds of attention on TikTok, mostly from people wondering why you would want to take her anywhere, or why you would want to get your hands on her at all. I mean, inside the case she's carried and literally says, "Do not open under any circumstances." Now, Eric did understand this, and he assured that those who are worried that they take all the proper precautions, and that's not just putting Annabelle in a seatbelt. "We take this very seriously," he said. "Our faith is very strong, all of us. So we bless the van. We all have enormous amounts of holy water. We have a priest come in, bless the area, and bless the items. And maybe put her in a car seat too, just to be safe." And number 1, Buddhist exorcism. You know, it wasn't just the United States where Ed and Lorraine worked on their cases. If there was a call for it, the Warrens would do their best to answer. Plus, I feel like if you only ghost hunt in one country, you're missing out on so many good demons and scares. If you're a fan of the channel, then you know by now just how many really fascinating cultural and regional monsters that exist out there and all the different ghost stories that exist. You know, you can spend your whole life battling demons, but have you ever gone toe to toe with a yokai or an oni? Maybe that's why the Warrens decided to take a trip to Japan in the early 2000s. Maybe they just wanted a nice vacation, or maybe they were getting tired of local poltergeists and wanted a new difficult challenge. They set out to Japan to investigate these allegedly haunted tunnels, where a number of people were reported to have died in. Ed was a former World War II Navy veteran, and he had spent a lot of time around Japan and was interested in their culture and the reports and things that he had heard. Of course, it was hardly a vacation, because while they were there, they were asked to participate in a Buddhist exorcism of a young woman named Teresa who had become the unwilling host to a litany of demons. They were aided by a group of Buddhists during their exorcism, a change of pace from their usual help from ordained Catholic ministers. We'll play it for you now so you can get some eyes on it. In the clip, we can hear Lorraine doing her level best to try and cast the evil out of the young girl's body. Now, the clip's a bit hard to watch, I'm gonna be honest. Seeing somebody writhe around screaming in what looks like agony, but luckily, they're being tended to by the experts, I guess. If there was anyone you'd want, it would probably be Ed and Lorraine and a group of Buddhists. Ed and Lorraine said the Buddhists were extremely helpful, saying they were cut from a different cloth. And if they're ever running out of Conjuring movies or running out of ideas for them, I think they should start sending the Warrens internationally. Or just stop pretending they're based on true stories altogether. Have the Warrens try to fight Godzilla, or have them fight the Predator or something. Let's see them exercise their way out of that one. Let's see holy water and a little rosary take on the Predator.
Starting off this countdown, we have the Buddhist exorcism.
破壊してはあなた自身も幸せになれないのだと今住んでる人たちのことも考えてほしいとマダム・ローレンが今言ってるウォーレンがわかる
In the early 2000s, the Warrens took a trip to Japan to check out these haunted tunnels that a number of people have died in. But while they were there, they were contacted to perform an exorcism on a woman named Teresa. This footage is very creepy. Not only is it actual footage of someone that is possessed, but you can also hear the demon in her voice reaching out to talk to Lorraine. In this clip I'm about to show you, Lorraine is trying to reach out to Teresa and get her to fight back against the demon possessing her.
Hear me? Teresa, you hear me. You understand me. Teresa, leave. Leave, Teresa. Leave, dear. Leave. I'm here to help you. I'm here to help you, Teresa.
Things take a turn when Teresa starts speaking in English to Lorraine. I should note that Teresa didn't know English, so clearly it was the demon speaking.
You see your mother? Go with your mother, Teresa. Go with your mother.
Go with your mother.
Go with your mother.
See your mother?
Do you see your mother?
Yes. Go with her.
She speaks English.
Towards the end of the exorcism, Teresa starts lashing out towards Lorraine and others. We see her crawling around and growling like a demon and talking all raspy.
Someone loves that. I was here before. That's my house.
I guess the demon was really fighting back because poor Teresa was going through a lot at this point. The footage ends with Lorraine once again telling Teresa to fight back against the demon. Hopefully they managed to complete this exorcism successfully. Now, I tried to Google this case, but unfortunately there wasn't much information out there on it, so we may never know. In fact, it was after this trip in Japan where Ed got really sick and his health started to decline. Maybe this demon had something to do with it. Moving on to number 4, we have Scotland's underground city. And if you guys are liking this video so far, then why don't you hit that like button?
And today, there still are.
They're still haunted.
Yes. There are people like you that see them. In fact, I've never seen them, but there are people that see these ghosts floating about. Mary King's been seen up here, and she's been seen down at the bottom.
In 1996, Ed and Lorraine Warren visited Edinburgh in Scotland to investigate an underground city. The city was said to be haunted. In the video, you see an older tour guide telling them about the history of this underground city, how there used to be underground shops and stuff like that down there. At one point, he talked about getting bad vibes from being down there, and apparently Lorraine was sensing that as well.
So that's when you get the funny feeling.
I got funny feeling, all right.
However,
very bad feeling.
One by one, they all died off until there was nobody left.
It gets worse when he talks about how everyone died down there and there were just piles of bodies because there was no one left to get rid of them. Which is probably why the place is haunted. I mean, a number of people died there and didn't have a proper burial. Well, at one point in the video, Lorraine claims she hears a ghost walking by.
Can it be?
No.
What are you hearing?
Like the sound of people, of more than one person together walking by, and, you know, like heavy clothing rubbing against each other, that type of thing. I could hear.
I'm going home.
And I could hear that, and I wondered, you looked, Frank, so I thought you heard the same thing.
No, I didn't hear it.
Yeah.
That's not all. She started to pick up on another vibe.
It feels like somebody's like squeezing your insides all together, actually. Squeezing the life right out of you.
I have no clue how she wasn't scared to death experiencing all of that. Honestly, she was brave. It blows my mind. In our third spot today, we have the family in Connecticut. And no, this isn't the same as the family from the haunting in Connecticut case. Just apparently, Connecticut has a lot of hauntings. So basically, Ed and Lorraine Warren went to Connecticut to help a family whose home was being haunted by a spirit. What I'm about to show you is real footage from this case. Basically, it starts with Ed and Lorraine sitting at a table praying with the family. Then Ed tries to make contact with whatever is haunting their house.
Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come.
One knock for yes, two for no. Are you a man? Are you a boy? One knock for yes, two for no. Yes. Okay.
Using that one knock for yes, two knocks for no method, Ed was able to find out more about this ghost.
Most here is it? Is it?
So the ghost was haunting their home and causing a scene because it didn't like the family's mother. But that's not the only ghostly thing that they managed to capture on camera. Later on, Ed asked the ghost to give them a sign, and then the kitchen chair moves on its own.
Give me some sign. Is that you moving something? Give me some sign that you're here. I command you to reveal your identity.
Yeah, no thank you. If that happened at my house, I would be out of there so fast. In our second spot, we have Maurice Theriault. If you've seen the movie The Nun, then you already know about a man named Maurice, or Frenchie. This guy was a hard-working farmer that ended up getting diabolically possessed. This occurred in 1985. Sometimes blood would randomly pour out of his body, like from his nose, eyes, and mouth. And he didn't know what was causing it. He also developed super strength and could randomly understand and speak Latin. At first he went to the police for help, then a priest, and then finally Ed and Lorraine Warren agreed to help him. Now, he apparently went through a number of exorcisms. The footage I'm going to share with you is from his last exorcism. So the footage starts off with Ed asking Frenchie to lift up his shirt. Apparently, random crosses would show up engraved in his skin.
At the front. Feet up in the shoulder? Yeah. Move, yeah, you're in the way, right? Yeah. Okay, both of
It literally looks like somebody took something sharp and carved crosses into him, and then it scarred up. But those would appear all over his body, randomly appearing and disappearing. During this exorcism, a number of scary things happened. For starters, we see him drooling from his mouth, but as soon as the drool hits his shirt, it turns to blood. Then, at one point, we see Frenchie hunched over in pain. This is apparently because spirits enter people through their solar plexus. And then at another point, we see Frenchie become incredibly still and his face changes completely. He doesn't look like himself. His eyes look so glossy. And lastly, we see a cut randomly appear on his forehead and start to bleed on its own, out of nowhere. That is absolutely horrifying. And in our number one spot, we had the unseen tapes. YouTuber Haley Reese got the chance to actually meet up with Tony Spira, the husband of Judy Warren. He provided her with insight into the Warren cases and actually showed her some unseen exorcism footage. She then uploaded this onto YouTube. In this video, we see Tony and Lorraine Warren performing an exorcism on a man named Roberto. Take a look at it.
This is the power, Jesus Christ. Okay? You hear me? Jesus Christ has all the power. You have none. What is your name?
So in the video, as you just saw, they're trying to find out this demon's name to then help expel it. And guys, you're not gonna believe what demon was inside of him. Here, continue watching.
What is your name?
Jesus Christ commanded you to answer that question.
What is your name?
What is your name? Beelzebub? Is that what you're saying? Beelzebub?
This dude was possessed by Beelzebub. When I heard that, I literally got shivers down my spine. Like, holy. So for those of you that don't know, in Christian texts, the name Beelzebub is often associated with the devil himself. They would alternate between using this name and Satan. He is considered one of the 7 princes of hell, and he is associated with the sin of gluttony. In other texts, he's described as the lieutenant of hell. He's second in power to Satan. It's crazy, but hold on. He wasn't just possessed by Beelzebub, but by other entities as well.
What other entity is inside you? God is commanding you. In the name of Jesus Christ, and all the saints, and all the martyrs, and all the angels command you to answer that question. What is it? Abaddon.
I genuinely don't know how they stayed so calm as this dude lists all the demons possessing him. The video went on and they found at least 4 demons were inside of him. They then asked the demons why they were possessing Roberto, and they replied with power.
Why are you in Roberto? Why are you there with Roberto? Jesus Christ doesn't like demonic spirits within a human spirit. Jesus Christ hates demonic spirits to be within a human being. Do you know that? You hate Jesus, huh?
I don't know about you, but that creeped me out. It is terrifying.
Starting off this countdown, we have the ghost in the photographs. In this footage, we see Ed and Lorraine Warren discussing a number of cases where they caught photographic evidence of ghosts. The show was hosted by Tony Spira, the Warrens' son-in-law. The first case they talk about revolves around a woman named Gail Martin, who we also see here. Basically, Gail moved into a house and for the longest time, nothing spooky happened. Then one day, she was out digging in the backyard and gardening. Her husband took a photo of her doing so, and when it developed, you could see a white silhouette of a ghost.
Years ago it was taken.
There it is.
Okay, here it is,
Tony. Now, you see that Gail is higher than that woman.
Then we have a second photo taken of Gail on the same day. And again, we see the same ghost in the shot.
Now, as you notice, Gail turns around and Gail is smiling. And because her husband is saying something funny. So at that point, the woman is smiling, and she puts her hand up to her mouth in that manner.
Unfortunately, since it's old footage, it is hard to see the ghost in the photo, like its face. It just kind of looks like a white blob. Now, Lorraine actually made contact with this ghost, and that's when we learned about her sad story. So according to Lorraine, the woman in the photograph once had a child who she absolutely loved. She even built a place for him on her property for him to stay, so he was always close to her. Then one summer, he was working at a children's camp when there was a polio epidemic. Sadly, her son contracted polio and 3 days later passed away. The mother was extremely heartbroken by this. So when she passed away, she stayed attached to this piece of land. Now, when Gail started gardening, the ghost made herself known because someone was working on the piece of land that was sacred to her.
Is out in the yard, in the garden, and now you're doing something to improve that. After all of these years probably of neglect, now you're going to be fixing it. And I believe that that is the reason she's there.
The next ghost that they talk about, though, is not as nice as the first one. Let's take a look at it.
Above the chair, right?
Right above the chair.
Right.
Now, this is in the lowest level of that property, but they did have a lot, unlike Gail, they had all sorts of infestation.
So the couple who owned this house witnessed really dark paranormal activity, and that's when they contacted the Warrens for help to get this evil spirit out of their house. And lastly, we have the Providence Ghost Man. This next ghost that they are going to be talking about is of a soldier in World War II. The story is very sad and scary.
His wife was informed that he was killed in action, not even missing. That he was actually killed in action.
And then a week later, she committed suicide.
She committed suicide, and 1 week after that, he was found alive.
That is just heartbreaking. His wife literally took her own life thinking her husband died, when in reality, he was just missing in action. Both of the ghosts are said to be attached to that home still. In fact, no one has moved into that home since. If you look at the top right of this next clip, you'll see the ghostly image of this man.
No one ever occupied that cottage again.
Now that looks like a man.
Yes.
But we have other photographs which look like a woman.
Yes, we do.
So where you have one spirit, you have many
more
other
than
spirits.
one, yes.
Moving on to number 4, we have the cursed objects. And if you guys are liking this video so far, then smash that like button because it really helps us out.
Many of the objects in this room here have had dire effects on people. People have been maimed, have been killed. People have wound up in mental institutions because of many of the things they write in this building here.
Now let's head on over to the Warrens Occult Museum. In this interview, Ed talks about how dangerous their museum really is and the number of people that have died or have been severely harmed after visiting it.
Raggedy Ann doll, which was responsible for the death of a young man who came in here one time, who challenged the doll to do its worst, and it did. Then you have a detective who was almost killed right in this room that we're standing in.
Now, the Warrens had a strict set of rules. They told visitors not to touch anything in the museum whatsoever. This is because their aura mingles with the object's aura and it can easily latch onto them. Next thing you know, you're bringing that demon home with you. Anyways, this is the process Ed will take you through if you do end up touching anything.
If anybody touches anything in this room, their aura mingles with the aura of that object, which is very evil. I would then tell them to close their eyes. I would vision them in what we call a Christ light, make the sign of the cross over them so they take nothing out of here. That's just a precaution that I always use.
As cool as the museum sounds, you'd never catch me there. In fact, according to Tony, when he arrived with the camera crew, the spirits were upset and decided to shut off all the lights on them to tell them that they were upset.
Well, we were starting to film, you mean, just as Rob was coming to us to start the interview, every single light went out. Every single light went out without any kind of jolting, just died. And then, what, 2 minutes later it came back.
That was a warning to get out of here.
So I think it's just about 9 o'clock at night. I think it's time.
We should leave.
The way that Ed said that gives me the creeps. Like, yeah, it's time for you to go. The demons want you gone. Yikes.
Number 3, the Shadow Doll. And coming in at the number 3 spot for today is going to be this footage of the Shadow Doll. When you first enter the Warrens' haunted museum, be it digitally or physically, one of the first things you'll see is this frightening little doll, affectionately dubbed the Shadow Doll. The Shadow Doll, that's fun to say. It's made of bird feathers and real human teeth. Lovely, those are some of my favorite ingredients. Now, it's currently owned by Tony Spera. He offers a bit of insight into the doll's history, saying it was originally acquired at an antique shop where it was sold with the owners of the shop completely oblivious to the doll's cursed energy. I don't buy that at all. What do you mean oblivious to the doll's cursed energy? Somebody came to you and sold you a doll made of bird feathers and human teeth, and your first instinct wasn't to douse the thing in holy water and kerosene for good measure? I know pawn shops ain't exactly the classiest place around, but you gotta have some standards, right? You gotta be able to recognize evil. There are very few dolls with human teeth that aren't evil. Spera claims the doll has an insidious curse inside it. Oh, wait, no, sorry, the Warrens weren't insidious. Anyway, the curse says that if you take a photograph of the doll, and when it develops, you write a curse that you'd like to inflict and then send it to your victim. The person who then opens the envelope and sees the photo of the doll will invite the curse into your home. The doll is also capable of some dream magic like Freddy Krueger and can even stop your heart while you're asleep if Mr. Warren is to be believed. And I know what you might be thinking. Did you just curse all of us by showing us this footage and pictures of the doll? No, of course not. I toss a salt circle around the camera before I film anything just to make sure no residual curses pass through the internet. I will say though, I have heard some pretty credible rumors that you're more susceptible to be cursed if you don't like, comment, and subscribe after watching a video, so I honestly would say on the safe side of things, you should do that. And on another side note, having done a lot of research on the pair of these two, I cannot stress how many haunted dolls and toys these people had. They had like the world's scariest Toys R Us in their backyard. Number 2, Scotland City Under the City. Now, the Warrens' investigations didn't just take them on cross-country road trips to the United States. The Warrens visited a ghost in almost every state they claim, and then some. The Warrens' quest saw them traveling all over the globe in an effort to uncover truths and combat evil wherever it was found. In this recently uncovered footage, we can see a unique perspective from Lorraine digging underground in the secret vaults beneath Edinburgh. Under the ground is a series of large, cavernous vaults that were once used as a storage space for merchants, but when abandoned became home to Edinburgh's poorest, who began to make it their dwellings. Probably a real nice space, you know, no daylight, musty air, thriving rodent population, but you know what? For the right price, I would probably go for it. It's probably better than most apartments in Toronto. Because of this, the vaults were the perfect place to conduct a little nefarious business that aren't quite fit to discuss on YouTube, but naughty stuff, just know that. It's believed that two of Edinburgh's most prolific criminals hid bodies here before taking them to medical schools to sell off. Having known this, with this context, it's absolutely no surprise that people believe the vaults to be haunted and claim that they feel watched or touched when walking through them. So, if there's something weird going on, the Warrens follow. This one's actually pretty cool footage, I gotta admit. It's first person, making you feel like you're exploring the subterranean depths with her. She's being guided by an old Scotsman who seems to know the tunnels pretty well, and I gotta say, if I ever take a tour of an underground vault, this is exactly who I would like to be taking me in. An old Scottish man, that's the most appropriate and trustworthy way to go ghost hunting. Now, they didn't find anything on this particular investigation, but while in there, Lorraine does claim that she can feel something communicating with her. Could it be spirits from long ago reaching out to Lorraine Warren, who claimed she had an extrasensory gift? Or maybe it was just kind of cold down there. And number one, an exorcism. To some, the ultimate dream would be getting to ride up in the front seat with Warrens on one of their cases, getting to experience the paranormal firsthand under the tutelage of those who claim to have battled it their whole lives. It would be like if Obi-Wan Kenobi asked you if you want to go on an adventure with him. It'd be awesome. Well, hey, some people, they get to live their dreams every day. Like me, my dream was to stand in front of a camera and endlessly talk about ghosts and goblins, and it really is just the best. But a YouTuber by the name of Haley Reese got to live her dream when she met Tony Sparrow, the husband of Judy Warren, the daughter of the family, and Lorraine Warren, a bit before she passed away. She got blessed with a look into some never-before-seen footage of the pair of demonologists conducting fieldwork, namely an exorcism. Now, the person in the video has been blurred out to protect their safety, as, you know, it's one thing to be possessed by a demon, but doxing, whole other. We see Lorraine and Tony both fiercely conducting an exorcism, locked in spiritual warfare against a demonic force. We can hear Tony asking for the demon's name repeatedly, not because he's a friendly guy trying to make conversation, but because in order to properly drive a demon out of a host, you need to know its name. The name said, Beelzebub. Now, there is a little bit of a discrepancy whether or not Beelzebub and the devil are considered different entities, really depending on what book and depending on who you ask. Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. Either way, it's very bad news to have inside of you. Worst part is apparently that wasn't even the only demon inside there. It was like a clown car of demons inside one guy. Not enough room. Luckily, the pair was able to get all of the demons outside of them and banish them away. Does anyone wonder, does it leave like a weird taste in your mouth after you've had demonic possession? I feel like there's an aftertaste, you know? I definitely feel like I would need to brush my teeth afterwards, I think.
In our 5th place position, we have my favorite creepy doll, Annabelle. Back when I was in high school, I actually got to portray her in a local haunted house, which was the beginning of my scare acting career. Hey, I promise I am quite terrifying if I want to be. I promise. For those of you who might be rolling their eyes right now, I'm going to refresh memories on the real Annabelle story. So feel free to cozy up and listen. Donna and Angie were student nurses and good friends who had decided to room together while in school. And for Donna's 28th birthday, her mom had gifted her a very large Raggedy Ann doll, something she was thrilled about. Personally, I'd react the same way. Let the record know that I'm always down to accept gifts of dolls or plushies. Soon after adopting the precious doll, Donna started to notice some weird behavior. She would leave Annabelle in her bed every morning behind her locked bedroom door, seating her the same way with her arms and legs crossed, and would come home at night to Annabelle having moved rooms and in positions that weren't possible. She's described a few instances of the doll kneeling, and speaking from experience, stuffed dolls can't kneel without falling for more than a few seconds. Donna and Angie then started finding notes left throughout the apartment, written on parchment paper in red pen. Two things they didn't own. When Donna's boyfriend Lou started criticizing the doll, unexplainable handprints and scratches began appearing on his body. And that's when the girls made the decision to call a priest. who then brought in the Warrens. They were able to calm down the entity enough to remove it from the home and transport her to their museum, where she resides to this day. Now, the footage I'm talking about here is from the visitors who have visited Annabelle in her current residence over the years. If you look closely, you can just see the energy that's alive in her. Also, if she was never removed from her box until like the last few years, how is she able to change position ever so slightly from one video to the next? You tell me here. In fourth place, we have footage from a Buddhist exorcism. Known as parita, which can be translated as protection or safeguard, it refers to the Buddhist practice of reciting certain verses and scriptures in order to ward off misfortune or danger. The practice of reciting or listening to the parita suttas began very early in the history of Buddhism. The Mahavamsa contains the earliest historical reference to this practice, describing how Upatissa I instructed monks to recite the Ratana Sutta throughout the night during a period when Sri Lanka was afflicted by plague and diseases. In the Pali literature, these short verses are recommended by the Buddha as providing protection from certain afflictions. The belief in the effective power to heal or protect of the Sakakariya, or asseveration of something quite true, is an aspect of the work ascribed to the Parita. It is also widely believed that all-night recitations of Parita by monks bring safety, peace, and well-being to a community. Parita discourses can be recited at events like a funeral or on the death anniversary of a loved one, and can also be recited to placate antagonistic spirits. In 1987, Ed and Lorraine took a trip to Japan to offer their expertise in some cases that were ongoing in different parts of the country, with one of their stops being to a Buddhist temple. Describing everyone they encountered as lovely, Ed and Lorraine were shocked when they came upon not one, but two people under possession. Ed described one as being under the influence of a snake demon, as they slithered around the floor constantly with their tongue darting in and out of their mouth. The possessed people were blindfolded, so the demons couldn't witness the rites, as the Buddhas went through the rituals and chanted around them. After the spirits were cast out, a bonfire was built to help guide them towards the afterlife. The footage we see is from a later round of prayers, which was held because one of the sets of spirits refused initially to depart from her attached soul. You can hear Lorraine attempting to guide the spirit out with the aid of a translator, coaxing Teresa to go on to the light and fly away, that her family was no longer here.
In our third spot today, we have the Warrens Museum. Again. The Warrens Museum is just filled with cursed and deadly items that literally could kill you. In this next video, you'll see just how dangerous and scary the museum really is, if you didn't pick up on that already. You'll be taking a look at one particular doll called the Shadow Doll, or Doll of Shadows.
And there are many what we call death dolls here. The doll you see here was made through black magic rituals. It's called a Doll of Shadows. Now, why is it called a Doll of Shadows? We'll take a look at it.
This doll is absolutely terrifying. Like, if you thought Annabelle was bad, this doll is 1,000 times worse.
It has human bones here and there and animal parts all over the body. You notice the nails in here and the tooth sticking out. Well, these are all feathers from crows and whatever. But this, I can tell through psychometry and through how it was made, that it was made with evil purposes.
So yes, this doll is composed of human bones and hair and teeth. The owner was using it for dark rituals, and in the end, the doll became possessed by a very powerful and malevolent demon. In fact, the way in which this doll was used is horrifying.
Now the purpose is this, that they take a picture of this doll, they send it to you, and they put the curse on the back. You take it and you look at it and you laugh at it, but it's not a laughing matter. Because once you see the image of the doll, it can be projected telepathically to you in your dream state. Dolls like this have actually come into nightmares.
Did you hear that? That is absolutely horrifying. But that's not all. According to Ed, this doll has killed a number of people in their sleep.
These images of these dolls can be so frightening that they've actually stopped people's hearts during the dream state.
Ed then goes on to tell how they got possession of the doll. So a couple ended up getting it for sale at an antique shop. The antique dealer practically gave it to them because it's cursed. But eventually they began to experience intense and horrifying nightmares. They later found out they were having identical nightmares. And one night the husband woke up with huge gash marks on his back.
The following night, it was not only scratch marks, it was claw marks. And very frightening. And they knew of us, they called me up. I went out there and they said, take this doll, please.
The scariest part? The doll can never be destroyed.
You see, you must be very careful with a doll like this. You can never destroy it. If you destroy it, you could have things occur to you that would be horrible. Because the spirits that are within the doll, then are freed. Where do they go? To the one that destroyed their home. And this is their home right here.
In our second spot, we have the real-life vampires. According to Ed and Lorraine Warren, vampires are real.
Ed, I'd like to ask you about vampires just to start right off. Are there such a thing as vampires, and can you tell me an example of one?
Positively. Vampires do exist, what we call human vampires.
But they aren't like the stereotypical vampires that we see in movies that are all like, I want to suck your blood. You know, have big fangs and a cape, and they don't look like Edward Cullen, sorry. No, they talk about two different types of vampires. The first being someone that hallucinates and imagines themselves as a vampire and just kind of takes on that role. The other is demonstrated by the Albany case from 1953.
Where the Calbani family had to open up a grave. And a family member had died, and they were saving a little money by digging the grave themselves. When they got down about 4 foot, they struck a coffin which shouldn't be there. It was their private plot.
He goes on to say that the coffin was of antique nature. They opened it up, and there was a perfectly preserved man in there.
And inside was a man about 45 years old. And he was fresh to the touch as though he had just been buried.
That's not even the freaky part. So even though the plot was there, there's a law saying you can't exhume the body until you get a court order. So this process took about a week. And when they went back to the grave, the coffin and body had both deteriorated.
The mother of the family went back and had the ground consecrated. And then they dug up the grave again, and this time, when they opened it up, inside was a corpse that looked as though it had been buried for many, many years, just a skeleton. The coffin itself had greatly deteriorated.
This freaked everyone out. Newspapers got word of the story and it was in the headlines for weeks. People went wild and were like, this is a vampire. And they were right. According to the Warrens, the man in the coffin was a sorcerer and user of black magic and also a vampire. He had put himself into a catatonic state. He was alive, but just barely. Still alive, but I'm barely breathing. And then at night he would leave the coffin with his astral body and find his prey. His astral body was being connected to his physical body by something Ed refers to as a silver cord. So no matter how far he went, he could still make it back to his body.
But while the physical body is still alive, there's a silver cord, a supernatural cord, that emanates from the physical body to the astral body. No matter how far away that astral body goes, it could go 3,000 miles, that cord would still be attached. It's only when that cord, that supernatural cord, is broken, that death comes to that physical body.
So somehow that cord got broken, and maybe that was when the woman got the land consecrated. And that's why the next time they went to the body, he was just bones. Now, you're not gonna believe this next part. I mean, it's hard for me to believe, I'm not gonna lie. So this vampire dude didn't arise from his tomb and go around biting people's necks to suck their blood. No, no, no.
And he would go in search of blood, but he would not bite into anybody's neck. He could take the blood through what we call teleportation, apports. Now today, of course, with all the ways that somebody could get blood, a vampire doesn't have to attack anybody to get that blood.
So vampires literally could be real and among us. They just can get blood sneakier ways, like maybe they work at a blood donation center or a hospital or something. Ever think of that? The Warrens did. And in our #1 spot today we have Annabelle the doll.
All right, I think one of the most famous would be Annabelle. This is a Raggedy Ann doll that's made like thousands of other dolls, except that this doll was used in communication, almost like having a seance.
In this next interview with Ed and Lorraine Warren, they talk all about Annabelle the doll and her origin story. So story goes that a young nurse received the doll as a gift from her mother. She lived with a fellow nurse. The two worked together and lived together. Well, one morning the nurse brought down the doll while they were eating breakfast and placed it on a chair at the table. This was meant to be a joke like, oh haha, she's having breakfast with us. But the next day she did the same thing. She brought the doll down to the kitchen table and sat her down at a chair. And the next day she did this until something terrifying happened.
But the third morning, they're talking to the doll, and the arms of the doll are on the chair like this. Suddenly they went up and onto the table, Now this didn't frighten them. This intrigued them, to the extent that the one nurse said to the other one of the nurses knows a medium. Let's ask her about this. I'll bet you there's a spirit in that doll. That's what they did.
And that was their first mistake. So they did end up taking it to a medium, and the medium informed them that a spirit of a 6-year-old girl who had died in a car accident on the road by their house was latched onto this doll. Surely enough, they searched this and a young girl named Annabelle did pass away in an automobile accident near them. But listen to what Ed says here.
But God does not allow the spirit of a child to go into a doll. This was a demon who was posing as that little child to create sympathy to these two young women, which it did.
It worked, and this demon tricked the girls. They ended up looking after this doll thinking it was Annabelle, the little girl. They would take it out on excursions, buy it clothes, jewelry, etc. But then it started to attack the girls. The scariest thing occurred when the 2 nurses came back from their shift.
They'd come home after midnight, put the key in the door, unlock the door, and who do you think is standing there? The Raggedy Ann doll.
Standing there.
Now that doll has flimsy legs. If you try to stand it up, you can't.
Hearing Ed say this just sent shivers down my spine. Literally. Just imagine going home and seeing that doll standing perfectly upright. The doll later went on to attack one of the nurse's boyfriends by choking him out in his sleep.
I dreamt that that doll was strangling me. He had marks on his throat. Was it psychosomatic? Well, let's see.
But wait, there's more. The boyfriend ended up picking up the doll and throwing it across the room, and Annabelle did not like this.
Picks it up and throws it right across the room. You're nothing but a rag doll. You couldn't hurt anyone. With that, Tony, 7 psychic slashes appear on his body. Wow. Now, we've seen these kind of slashes. We've filmed them. These slashes come from nowheres. The blood came right through his shirt.
Then finally, Ed and Lorraine Warren got involved and took Annabelle to their museum.
Number 5. The White Lady Ghost. Among the Warrens' career of demonology was this peculiar case involving a local Connecticut legend, the White Lady Ghost of Union Cemetery. Whoosh, that's a doozy of a title. Can't she just be a spooky ghost? Anyway, Union Cemetery dates back 400 years, and it's said to be haunted by this one notable ghost. The tricky thing is though, nobody quite knows the exact origin of who she is. Some speculate that she's a woman who lost her child in childbirth and hasn't been able to move on to the afterlife because she still seeks out her child. Others speculate that she's a ghost of a victim who had been dumped into a sinkhole near the cemetery, and she's been unable to move on while this crime goes unsolved. You know, the fact that we don't even know her name or who she is, that's probably bothering her. That's probably contributing to all her worldly stress. The only things anyone can agree on truly is that those who say they've seen her claim that she's dressed in a bright white nightgown and has her head and face concealed with a white bonnet. One particularly good ghost story, local legend, says that in the late 90s, a firefighter responding to a call nearby said a woman in a white dress jumped in front of the truck and landed behind him. When he leapt out of the vehicle, there was no body on the ground, but a dent in the hood. Naturally, such a popular local ghost story caught the attention of Connecticut natives Ed and Lorraine Warren, and this never-before-seen footage was released by Tony Spera, their son-in-law, and it's Ed filming the cemetery looking for proof of the White Lady. We'll play some of it for you now so you can get your eyes on it and you can try to make out what's happening. Ed Warren claims that in the footage you can see the ghost walking behind him in the shadows and turning to look at him. Lorraine Warren once said this evidence was so important that it had to be locked away to be studied by the New England Society of Paranormal Research. And I don't want to pop anyone's balloon here. It looks to me like they locked it away because it's not really that impressive. I personally couldn't really see anything in this, but let me know down below if you think this is smoking proof of a ghost walking through the graveyard, or if it's just some blurry lights through the fog. And if you're looking for more ghost videos, stories about Ed and Lorraine, hauntings, possessions, exorcisms, and basically anything freaky, Top 5 Scary has all of that and then some on top of it. Click through, subscribe, and like, and I am certain you'll find something to suit your fears. Stay scared. Number 4. The Museum Tour. If you want to go to the world's foremost collection of haunted relics and cursed objects, there's probably no room more affected by evil than the legendary collection of the Warrens' Haunted Museum of souvenirs from their case files. Now sadly, as of this recording, the museum is currently closed down and hopefully reopening someday soon, but in the meantime, you can take a little digital tour, as this footage posted by the Warrens' son-in-law, Tony Spera, shows Ed Warren giving a guided tour of some of the more unique and memorable haunted artifacts resting in that Connecticut garage. Now the full video is definitely worth a watch if you're a fan of the Warrens, since it's about as close as you'll be able to get to walk around the museum these days. It's a full half-hour long of Ed Warren walking around, going into grand detail and recounting some stories about their more notable cases. Some shoutouts I'll include real quick include the witch Hannah Cranna, an old Connecticut legend, or the Conjuring Mirror, which might sound like it has something to do with the movie series, but actually refers to a bizarre case where someone used the mirror in a ritual to try and summon a demon and ended up inviting a poltergeist into his house. Ed talks briefly on some of their favorites, their cursed dolls and toys, such as a dinosaur from the Devil Made Me Do It case, and of course, no visit to the Warrens Museum could possibly exclude mention of Annabelle, who's basically the star attraction of the place and probably why anyone knows who the Warrens are and what keeps the lights on for so long. Annabelle is shown under a tight lock and key as Ed goes over her history of how they brought her in and first found her and how they eventually contained her. He touches briefly on her protocol, how she has to always be locked up in a storage box behind glass, surrounded by rosary beads and doused in holy water in an effort to keep the evil inside of her tucked away. And just a quick little small aside here from me. If a spirit is so powerful and so malevolent that it's able to possess a doll and contain unspeakable evil and attack humans, how is it thwarted so easily by a little bit of glass? I mean, I guess it's still a doll, it doesn't get demon strength, but I didn't know the solution for dealing with demons is the same way you deal with like a dog that's being kind of troublesome. You just put something around them until they can behave. Anyway, moving on.
Coming in at number 3, we have the ghosts in the cathedral.
No, if you look at this slide now, I want you to see, point it out to them.
Don't do that.
Let them see where the man is. There's a man, he's right there in that picture.
I mean, the camera zoom in kind of points out where the ghost is, but if you didn't see it, that is a real life ghost that the Warrens managed to catch on film. Here's a close-up of it if you didn't spot it.
When there he is. See, right in the corner, and you see him, and that's in the cathedral. Now remember that the cathedrals, buildings in the United Kingdom are extremely old.
So I clearly see a man in a suit. Hopefully you all see that too. According to the Warrens, tragedy took place in the church and a number of spirits haunt the church. They didn't go into great detail, but back in the day, people actually got burned alive in this church for being part of different Scottish clans, and now their souls haunt it.
I think it was the
McDonald's and the Campbells.
Right?
Yeah, the McDonald's and the Campbells.
And the Campbells were burnt to death in that church, so you can imagine the terrible things that go on there.
Do you think that most hauntings occur like in places like United Kingdom compared to here?
Yes.
Coming in at number 2, we have the Anna Eklund case. In this next video, we see Ed and Lorraine Warren discussing the Anna Eklund case. Anna was an American woman who in 1928 became possessed and underwent a number of exorcisms. During her exorcisms, things would happen, like she would hiss or howl like an animal. She would float in the air, and whenever holy water would touch her skin, it would burn her skin right off. Let's see what Ed and Lorraine Warren had to say about this case.
Now this woman was under possession by her own father and devils from the age of 14.
Sadly, her father had taken advantage of her on a number of occasions in which she would try to resist. She didn't want to go along with it, which made him mad and made him start to resent her.
He hated her so much that when he died, he actually possessed her with these devils, right up to the age of 54 when Father Ressinger went to help her. Now she had 30 exorcisms performed, which all failed.
That is incredibly messed up, but that's not all. This woman underwent 30 exorcisms. All of them had failed, so they decided to send her to St. Joseph's Church in Iowa to see if they could get the demons out of her. When she arrived, she was placed on a cot in front of nuns.
They brought the woman to the convent, and the nuns were all stationed around this woman on a cot. Suddenly, a loud, bellowing, hoarse voice came out of the woman. Terrible obscenities, filthy obscenities came from the woman's mouth. and she rose into the air and went up to the ceiling and clung to the ceiling by her hands and feet.
Literally like the scene in The Exorcist. After that, she had to be tied down to the cot. That's not even the worst part.
And the nuns constantly were throwing holy water at her. This woman, outpours of what looked like spaghetti and human hair came out of her mouth.
That is absolutely disgusting. And apparently she would throw up 20 to 30 times a day. Not only that, but it stunk so bad that the nuns had to take 15-minute shifts with her or else they would fall ill. Imagine how horrific it must have been to be there with Anna and performing this exorcism on her. And in our number one spot today, we have The Exorcism. The footage I'm about to share with you is footage of a possessed woman going through an exorcism. It's footage directly from the Warren files. This exorcism footage is 1 hour and 20 minutes long. In fact, the footage had been cut down, so that means they were performing an exorcism for over an hour. I will say though that the footage was blurred by Tony Spira before he uploaded it to his YouTube channel. He did this in order to censor some graphic images, but also for the privacy of this woman. Although it's blurred, we can still see how crazy the woman is acting and can hear the weird noises that she is making. So you can see the woman trying to fight back against the demon that is possessing her, and she's crying out in pain from having this demon fighting to stay in her body.
Are you alright?
She says he's over there.
The devil?
So in the footage you can see Tony Spira holding the poor woman as the demon was controlling her. She can't speak, but she's trying to do so. All that's coming out is gasps for air. But at one point she points beyond the camera, and Tony knew that the demon was in the room with them and was situated right where the woman was pointing. It gets even creepier when everyone in the room starts chanting along, trying to get this demon out of her, while Tony holds her head up still.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
It's scary, but it's also really sad. The poor woman was going through so much pain and suffering. Number 5. Satanic Worship Idol. Before we dive into the strange footage of the satanic idol, let's talk about its odd and terrifying backstory. The story of the idol begins in 1991, near Ed and Lorraine's home. There was a lost deer hunter wandering through the area, and after hours of finding no discernible landmarks or ways home, he came face to face with an odd and captivating discovery. In front of him was a large, raised rock formation consisting of circular rocks and a strange being standing in the center of the altar. The hunter, as I believe most of us would be, felt quite uncomfortable and uneasy about this discovery. So he began making his way back to his car, but on his way, he turned to his side and noticed an elderly man with dark eyes dressed in a fully black suit walking in perfect step with him. The two hadn't shared a word, and the hunter became more anxious with each hollow step he took, still not sure of the way out of the woods. The hunter cautiously turned over to the strange man, and with a deep breath he asked, "How do I get out of here?" The strange man lifted up a frail hand and pointed towards a small overgrown path. The hunter turned to see a small pathway and then turned back to the man to thank him, but upon glancing, the man was nowhere to be seen. He disappeared as quickly as he had appeared. The hunter escaped the forest, but was so perplexed and intrigued by the strange encounter that he decided to contact none other than Ed and Lorraine Warren. Now, here's where a new, hardly known fact is revealed. Ed and Lorraine almost always investigated reports armed with a camera to capture any footage that they may have missed and for review. Ed and the hunter located the altar, and in a moment of what can only be described as white audacity, Ed removed the demonic doll from the altar and brought it back to the museum. In the footage, this strange elderly man can be seen lurking in strange corners of the screen, materializing in random positions throughout the footage. The video recording also cuts out frequently, and strange humming noise can be heard along with the glitches. Ed and Lorraine kept the footage under wraps due to the effects that the doll had on Lorraine. And if you'd like to find out more about that reasoning, check out our video on cursed artwork in the Warren Occult Museum. Number 4. Snecketer House. The Warrens are famous for their home investigations of the Perron family, the Conjuring movie inspiration, and the Amityville home. But there's a less known, very well documented case that the pair also investigated, the Snecketer House. Carmen and Al Snecketer rented a home in Southington, Connecticut, but upon exploring the house, they encountered something that would have scared me out of there faster than light. The pair discovered mortuary tools in their basement, tools that were used in the closed morgue that was in the basement of this house. The home was a funeral parlor. The only time living in a funeral home is acceptable is in My Girl. The couple began smelling rotten flesh, strong chemical odors throughout the house, and the water from the taps would randomly turn a deep red. Their sons were plagued by visions of ghosts and other strange entities. The ghosts became aggressive towards the family, and that's when they decided to call the Warrens for assistance, scared for their lives. The Warrens showed up, filming. They documented several apparitions. Lorraine reported feeling several supernatural entities, all who were filled with vengeance and bouts of pain. The Warrens deduced, within the same visit, that they believed the morticians would participate in horrendous, actually unspeakable acts with the deceased bodies brought into the home. Ed and Lorraine ended their investigation very quickly. In the tape, it's reported that the Snecketers repeatedly asked for sound advice on how to deal with their issue, but sadly, no footage beyond their questioning has been released. The Warrens' advice to the family remains a complete mystery. What do you think their advice would have been?
And at number 3, the effects of seeing a ghost. This 7-minute video features Ed and Lorraine Warren alongside a guest of theirs named Rod. Rod had seen multiple ghosts and has a discussion with the paranormal experts about the aftermath of seeing a ghost and how it affects one's life. He goes on to explain the intense sorrow that he felt after seeing the ghost, which just so happened to be the White Lady of Union Graveyard. He experienced night terrors, was extremely upset, and had excessive tremors for months, reoccurring whenever he was reminded of the event. Ed goes on to explain that the sadness that Rod felt is something called radiotelethesis, which happens when a human picks up on the emotions of a spirit when they have a close physical encounter. The fact that something like this could occur to any individual is pretty darn creepy.
A good friend of mine had died, and a couple nights after that, sitting in my bedroom, I saw the figure of a woman in front of my windows. So my bed was on this end of the room and my windows were there. And from the light coming in, I could see a woman sitting looking out my bedroom window, and where the window ended, that's where the figure ended.
And at number 2, the Borley Rectory. The Borley Rectory is said to be one of the most haunted places in the UK. A nun had been buried within the walls of its church, and once found was moved to a nearby graveyard. But ever since, there's been some serious haunting. According to this video though, Ed and Lorraine have been to that location over 200 times. Talk about courage. The duo discussed their first experience at Borley Church in 1976, with Lorraine saying that the investigator that she was with, who was very skeptical to begin with, was assaulted by a spirit, claiming he could not breathe, and that something was pushing him. Later on, they listened back to the audio that they were recording while they were there. Lorraine said that you could hear a woman's voice over his screaming, saying the words, "Hit him, hit him." And finally, in at number 1, poltergeists. In this clip from a documentary, Ed and Lorraine talk about poltergeists and their dangers. It features a clip of them that they recorded with a family in Connecticut dealing with a poltergeist, with the family's face blurred out in order to give them privacy. It starts off with the group saying prayers, and then Ed tries to communicate with the spirit. We hear the spirit making banging noises in response. Ed proceeds to ask the spirit who it doesn't like, listing off each individual in the family. It finally answers yes via the knocking to the family's mother. Then Ed confronts the poltergeist on his own, and we see chairs and furniture moving around the room. The video continues, showing a clip of the family's little girl being bothered by the poltergeist, who moves the chair that she's sitting on. The Warrens would then later call a priest to perform an exorcism, which wasn't on camera. Arguably, you can see why. Although by the end of the clip, the two of them note that there's no way of knowing if a poltergeist may or may not come back to haunt the family.
In the name of Jesus Christ, I command you to reveal your identity.